But I think that what feminism has done is there's ideas of it that I agree with you. Put a man and a woman, the same credentials, put them together, and they both going for the same role. I don't want them selecting a man just because he's a man. I want them to select the best person for the job.
Right.
I agree. And I love that idea of feminism. If they want to do it, they want to go for it. Don't deselect them if they have the equal everything. And the only difference is gender. And then you're going to go with a man because, or this, that, and the third. Now, I'd argue that doesn't happen. And data shows that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. When you adjust for how much longer hours that men work, if you adjust for maternity leave, and stopping to take care of a child, if you adjust for the type of jobs that men and women go for, mm-hmm. If you assess the risk level in those jobs, so not even just the type of jobs, but like STEM is some of the most high paying field. If you look at the difference with males in STEM, like the percentages, or in females in STEM, mm-hmm. but also if you look at the riskier jobs, and often there's a correlation between the level of risk in a job and how much that pay is, and men take way more riskier jobs and positions. Like if you adjust for all those things, what the economists have showed is that those numbers are relatively even between male and female hiring rates. So, but one can argue that there's degrees of that are due to ideas that were pushed from feminism to equal out those stats. One can argue that as well. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, if you go back in history,
okay,
and you take a look at like the women's suffrage movement.
Yeah.
And the women's suffrage movement, which is, the right to vote, who had to make that vote in order to make that happen? Men did.
Yeah.
Now, do you know who was the largest proponent to not let the vote happen?
Women.
Oh, so there's not new news to you?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, though. So here's the wonderful thing, right?
Yeah.
Take the civil rights movement, for example,
mm-hmm.
right? It was a white person who helped move that forward.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
But it was people of color, Black people, who were pushing for the movement.
Yeah, but
right?
Okay, I'm listening. I'm following.
But within that movement, if we didn't have our counterparts, if we didn't have white people on the other side, mm-hmm. as allies,
mm-hmm.
also advocating for the things that we wanted, that movement would have been stagnant or would not have been what it was, mm-hmm. right? So it's important to understand you have to have allies. And if we're talking about feminism and women wanting equality, when you're talking about whether it's pay, whether it's jobs, then yes, you have to have men who are going to support that. You have to have men that are going to move that agenda forward.
Yeah.
Why was it that men had to do it? Because those were the people in power. Men were the ones in power. So who else was going to move the agenda forward?
So I would say the difference there is that, civil rights movement, it was Black people wanting to integrate.
Equality.
Integrate, be viewed as equal under the law.
Right.
But it was Black people pushing that. The difference with the suffrage movement is that women didn't want to vote because as soon as you vote, then you might be on the next draft. You got to do jury duty, right? You have to, right? And there was things that they didn't want. So it was men that pushed that forward, even though the majority of women did not want that. Now, I'd argue that in the civil rights movement, the majority of Black people wanted to be viewed as equal human beings.
Right, but you have to understand the suffrage movement, the feminist movement started from women. It wasn't men who started it. It wasn't men obviously pushed it forward again because that was who was in power. It was mm-hmm. white men in power. So that's who's going to push it forward. But women started it. Now, granted, I'm sure, like today, mm-hmm. not every woman wanted that. Like today with politics or religion, not everyone thinks the same. Not everybody wants the same things.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal. So women started that. it wasn't a man who started that. It was women who started it. And just because majority of women didn't want it doesn't mean that it wasn't for the women that did.
Okay. Is there any concepts of when I say the sentence, feminism destroyed the Black community, how does that make you feel, and do you agree or not?
So this one is a touchy subject, because when we constantly have this conversation, to me, it's like a one-sided conversation, when you're talking about feminism destroying the Black community, then that's what people are going to think. And I don't think that's the case. Now, granted, there are multiple things that have added to that, right? When you talk about drugs, when you talk about incarceration, when you talk about fatherless homes, like there are so many things that can contribute to the breakdown of the Black community. I don't think it's one thing. And I feel like this in particular is trying to pinpoint it on one thing when it's not the case.
You think it's a multifaceted problem?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So it's multifaceted, but specific to some of the things that we called out earlier, kind of that there's ideas of it that tries to make, whatever you can do, I can do better, which I don't think is true. I think that we all bring our own advantages, and there's something innate to that to that biology that the feminist movement tries to equal out and tries to paint everyone with a broad brush of equality. And it's not to say that one is more superior than the other, in my opinion. I don't think that. I do think that women can be more feminine in a superior way than men can. But men should rely in their masculinity, but relying in that masculinity makes them more superior in their masculinity. But if you get to that yin and that yang and you put it together, then you can get some love. But I'd argue that there's a degree of that where we're starting to lose out on the biological needs that we have as people. And instead we say, I am as a woman, Andy, I don't need no man, and all of these things.
See, that's where, and I have to stop you because.
Stop me, girl. Talk to me.
It doesn't have to be that. I think that's how you view it, right? Feminism doesn't have to be, I'm every woman and I don't need a man. Some feminists can be that way. Some feminists may be on the extreme end, right? And it's, I don't need a man. I can do everything that a man can do and I can do it better. That might be on the extreme end, right? But you're talking about a spectrum here of women. You're not talking about one singular person. You're talking about a spectrum. So there are women on the spectrum who say, I just want to be able to go out for the same jobs that you can go out for. Why is it that in 2020, we are just now having our very first female coach in an NFL Super Bowl? Why? You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about.
Because less go for that job.
But
less women go.
So here's the thing though. Football obviously has been a male
dominated.
Correct. Right. So you're going to have less because no woman was doing it.
Yeah. But if there's less people going for it, then it's not that it's not equal. It's that they have a lower chance of being hired because less women go. Now, I just want to also say too, I'm not arguing with that degree.
Yeah.
So when you say it's on a spectrum, that's not the layer of feminism that I'm talking about. That's breaking down the Black home.
Okay.
I'm talking about the layer of feminism, which attempts to emasculate a man for being masculine, and will say things that will try to shame him out of his masculinity.
I can't do that. I don't think a feminist can do that. That's on you. That's on a man. That's in the same respect of me saying, like, what's a great example? What someone says about me isn't my truth.
Okay.
What you say about me doesn't mean that's my truth, right? What I think about me, how I see me is my truth, right? How you see yourself, how you think about yourself is your truth. That's each individual's truth. So for a man to say, well, you're trying to demasculine, whatever. Like, I don't think that's the case. Maybe that's how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what it feels like to you, but I don't think that's the purpose of the movement. I don't think that's the purpose of when women say they're a feminist. Now, again, there are some women who may act like that, where they're like, you're less than, or try to do those things. But again, that's not the case with most women. They're not trying to do that. They're not trying to make a man feel less than, or try to make a man seem like he is not masculine. That's not the purpose of it.
I think that with any movement that starts out with good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
I think you can have actors within that
Absolutely.
can stretch, right? Like, anything ever, even down to religion.
Mm-hmm.
You get things within beliefs system that can be stretched to allow for something such as pedophilia to happen over decades.
Mm-hmm.
Menzie brings up an interesting point here. The only wage gap that exists is in porn. Women get paid more than men. Yeah, there's a wage gap in prostitution as well. You know what I mean? I can't command the dollar. Webcamming as well. I can't command the dollar. Should I want to choose that profession? What do you say to that? Is that a wage gap?
What do you say?
The only way, it says it right here, the only wage gap which exists is in porn. Women get paid more than
I
men.
have no idea. I have no clue.
That's a fair point though. I mean, but but there's more women, from my understanding, there's more women than men, and they are valued differently. So then they command a different level of pay. DeMonte, who's been very active in this discussion, is that a CGI avatar, DeMonte? It's kind of creeping me out. I'm not gonna lie to you, my G. He looks like a grown baby CGI. The wage gap was debunked. The only wage gap was in the Fortune 500 companies in the CEO positions. Yeah, it's overwhelmingly male. That is very true. Daryl Stevens, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Take your victory, but don't be selective with your equality. Take all of it. Military drafting, equal jail sentences, equal treatment, and no pedestal. Military drafting. Yeah, when we get drafted, that's men. If it was a question
a long time ago.
It was, but if you ask someone that, back in the 70s during the Vietnam War,
yeah,
whose life is harder, men or women? I think you can make a very easy argument to say men at the time that was happening, because men were being shifted off and young boys, because when you 18, 19, 20, to my eyes, as a 34-year-old, you're still a young boy. You think of yourself as a man at that time, but the things that I knew at that time are a lot different than the things that I know right now. I was just a boy masquerading as a man. You know what I mean?